major chambers of commerce countywide, the Santa Maria Chamber, the Lompoc Chamber, and the South Coast Chamber. Our goal is to make the business case to you to join us as champions. Now, the three components that I mentioned before of what we need: effective and coordinated outreach to people who are homeless, housing for all the people who need it, and supportive services to help people with employment, alcohol and drug problems, mental health issues, and the challenges of daily living like budgeting, bill paying, community engagement. So let's start with outreach. Right now, homeless people are hurting your businesses. I've heard you personally, some of you talk about this. Some of you have unwanted guests coming into your restaurants, hotels, and storefront shops. They don't seem to understand that their behavior and sometimes their odors are turning away your customers. You don't want them using your restrooms, but you also don't want them using your back parking lot as a restroom. You've tried calling the police, but even if the cops come and to try to take someone, that same person comes right back. And usually the cops don't even take people, they just warn them and move them along. And now, thanks to the Supreme Court's Boise decision, people have the right to camp out in public spaces if there's no alternative shelter for them to go to. The solution to this problem is multidisciplinary outreach. Police should not be the first responders to people sleeping on the streets or even people acting out nonviolently in a mental health crisis. Yet they're the first person we send in our community, cops, who are trained and focused on catching bad guys. Multidisciplinary teams mean trained professionals who can engage with people, de-escalate acting out behaviors, provide needed medications, transport people to places that they need to be, and most importantly, get to know the people on the streets very well over time to earn their trust and cooperation. These teams, and they exist here in our county, include county behavioral health specialists, case managers from service providers, county public health nurses, and housing navigators to move people toward the next right step. These teams exist in Santa Barbara, but they also have been maybe even more successful when they're integrated in communities like San Diego and San Francisco. But aside from these providers, we need businesses to work together to maintain security and the good behavior of all of their customers, which includes people who are homeless. One role of business improvement districts is to share the cost of private security who can move people along, serve as a point of contact with the outreach teams, and develop a sense of safety and support. And this experiment was tried actually with public funding in Santa Barbara recently with the Ambassadors Program when we had a lot of people on State Street. And I heard a lot of success of that, and maybe we'll get into some of that during the discussion. But you want to know what supports a healthy business district and keeps eyes on the street to prevent bad behaviors the worst? Residents. Our retail-only malls and storefronts are failing in this region because there are not enough residents shopping for what they need in their own neighborhoods. When people commute to Santa Barbara to work, they leave their shopping at home or in Ventura or San Luis Obispo. The modern city, as we know it, depends on the balance of work, shopping, and living in one location to cross-pollinate the commerce of that region. Too much of our retail is separated from the local residents who might shop there. Too much of our housing is too expensive for our workforce to live anywhere near where they work. Here are just some example numbers. SB CAG estimates that 20,000 people a day are commuting to Santa Barbara County from the north and the south. If the average person spends $100 a week on groceries, this is just groceries in their home communities, that's $2 million a week. $2 million a week not being spent in our county, or $104 million a year, just in the lost grocery revenues. The real economic impact, not including the environmental costs and the cost of infrastructure when people commute long distance, is far more than $100 a person a week. The real annual costs of our jobs, housing, and balance is likely in the billions of dollars. All of the research and the economic forecasts point to a huge need for housing, not just in our county, but across the state. The same SBCAG study points out that Santa Barbara housing costs for both rental housing and home ownership far exceed statewide averages. Our economy is under attack by a broken housing market. It's no wonder that homelessness is growing. I like to say that homeless people are like canaries in a coal mine of a broken housing market. As we plan effectively to house all of our residents, we will eliminate homelessness just because there'll be enough places for people to live. But as you know, we also need services for those who are struggling in their housing. So let's talk about those services. Right now, we invest hundreds of millions of dollars countywide in supporting homeless people in ways that unfortunately enable their homelessness. That's what I said what I mean. We're spending money to keep people homeless. We know from 20 years of research and experience that providing the right level of services to people who are housed is far more likely to prevent homelessness than any other intervention. In other words, get them housed, give them services to support them in housing. When we're spending millions of dollars on emergency treatment, police, courts, jails, prison, we're providing services, but we're not solving problems. The estimate is that it costs for people in the most acute conditions about $20,000 a year per person. And that would impact roughly a third of all the homeless people in Santa Barbara. That's far less than the cost we're currently spending per person on what I mentioned with court costs, jail costs, and then add in the cost of lost business. These things are not made up in the numbers. Our experience in the county and around the country really reinforce this. We know it works when it works well. But you might say, and many have, if we provide more services, doesn't that attract more homeless people? This widely held belief is simply untrue. In Santa Barbara County, we survey homeless people every 2 years, and we consistently find that over 80% of people that are homeless in the county have been here more than a year. Not homeless more than a year. They've been part of the community. Many of them grew up here. People are not coming here to be homeless. And to support the view that standalone services might attract people, we found that the best services are provided to people in their own homes. So we're not talking about building new government buildings or new clinics for homeless people to go to. We're talking about putting them in housing and giving them the services they need. Services that are tailored to each person, that are both efficient and effective. So what's missing? You. And housing that regular people can afford. We need new affordable housing models that provide housing that's sustainable and affordable. No one believes that creating housing at more than $500,000 per unit is sustainable. And no one who works for less than $50 an hour can really afford to pay the rents and prices that are on the market here in Santa Barbara. It'll take business champions to plan where the new models of housing will be built, to decide on a realistic number of units to create, to clear legal and regulatory hurdles that allow new and innovative approaches to housing to flourish, and to help secure the resources needed to make this happen. We can't rely on government to do this. All of the things that I've mentioned require the innovation that many of you have, and the persistence and the eye on efficiency that business leaders provide. This meeting today and future meetings will show that sustained and innovative business thinking provides real solutions that end up with housing for all who need it. I'm asking that you join this effort to improve the efficiency, effectiveness, and coherence of the solutions to homelessness. We can't end homelessness without you. So thank you for coming, and I hope you find this meeting a good use of your time. I'm going to turn it over now to representatives from the chambers. And actually, I'm not going to bring up the agenda again because they're not on the agenda. I'm going to do this on the fly. I think I know who you all are. From Santa Maria, we have Chirag Patel. From Lompoc, we have Chuck Madsen. And both of them, I don't know if Chirag is the president of the board here, but both of them are board members of their respective chambers. And then from Santa Barbara, we have Tom Patton. I'm going to give them each 5 minutes to introduce themselves and to talk about their experiences with homelessness. And then Eddie's going to field the questions that you all have. So if you have questions if you have things to share or questions that you want to raise, please type them into the chat. And you know, if it's really a burning issue and really need to hear from you, maybe we can do that too. But let's get this started. I'm going to start in the north. I'm going to start with Chirag Patel. Take it away, Chirag.
Thank you, Chuck. It's a pleasure meeting everyone. My name is Chirag Patel, and I manage the Hampton Inn and Suites in Santa Maria. Um, I've just recently spoke with Chuck about this issue that we have been having here, at least in the North County. I've been getting kind of like a mixed bag over here where, some of them, some of our homeless members are very nice and some of them are quite the opposite. And so we've been working with the rest of the hotels here in the area. We've hired outside security during the nighttime to patrol the area to kind of help alleviate some of the issues. But on the flip side, we've also been able to assist with the homelessness and getting, all of our soap, shampoo, conditioners, sometimes towels, and kind of things like that, and try to help, get them bathed, kind of keep them warm with our blankets and everything like that. That we no longer need or use or something like that. I was speaking with Chuck earlier, and during our conversation is, just for as businesses, it's great to be educated in a way where, I didn't know before this whole pandemic kind of occurred, that we are all living in. I would always do the buffet breakfast, and I always, had extra, product and everything, where now there's organizations out there that do take that extra food and are able to provide that food to our homeless community, which was very interesting. So I think education is really a big factor, that if we can provide that to our businesses and different ways, or any maybe materials or anything that they're not using anymore, we can definitely donate that and help alleviate that. Um, yeah, and that's pretty much my kind of interaction and kind of 2 cents.
Chirag, you have a little more time. I wanted to check in with you. Is the chamber in Santa Maria, do you have any kind of official either policy or plan to look at homelessness or address it in some way?
As far as I know, I'm not. I'm for just to correct you, Chuck. I am not actually on the chamber board or anything. I'm one of the members here, part of the chamber. But I'm always, I'm new to the area. Our business built in 2019. The pandemic hit, and it was kind of a whirlwind after that. But you know. I take it as personal, where, my business is here in Santa Maria, and, I want to take a step forward to make, the Northern County, or at least Santa Maria too, a little bit better, and, my way of doing it is getting involved. And, that's kind of like you hit it on, nail on the coffin right there when you first, said the most important, thing that we're missing is people getting involved. And so this is my way of, educating myself and getting involved in the community.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Chuck,
moving-
real quick, if you don't mind, sorry, this is Molly Schiff. I'm with the Santa Maria Chamber.
Sure.
I can just say the chamber doesn't currently have any sort of policy on homelessness in the community, but we do recognize, obviously, it's an issue. And like Chirag had mentioned, getting our businesses that awareness and education is kind of our first step, I think, in developing some sort of policy or something going forward. So
Very good. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Moving down the coast to Lompoc, we have Chuck Madsen. Chuck, I believe you are the president of the board of Lompoc Chamber. Is that correct?
I am not the president. I am the chairman of the board of
Chairman.
directors for the
Thank
Lompoc.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Amber is also on with me today. She's the president and the CEO. Good afternoon, everybody. I am actually sitting currently about 100 feet from a homeless encampment in Isla Vista that I have been tasked through my employment outside of the chamber to assist the homeless in this community with connecting to services. I'm happy to say that I've worked with Chuck and Eddie and some of the other members that are on this meeting today over the years to try and provide supportive services and connect the homeless to resources in our community. And as Chuck had mentioned, you know, this is it is always a collaborative effort, and it's great when we can get, you know, chambers and businesses involved to be educated, be supportive of those, you know, in our communities that are struggling. From my experience over the past 12 years of working with substance abuse treatment centers and things like that, assisting, you know, homeless and other members of our community struggling with substance abuse issues. The homeless situation throughout our county is very complex. You know, each one of our individuals that are homeless have many issues, whether it be mental health, substance abuse, you know, legal issues, financial issues. I think we can all agree that housing is you know, an ongoing issue, and the cost of housing, especially for those that have lived on the streets. I know that, you know, currently in our shelters, I believe we have 800 beds, and our last point in time count, we had close to 2,000 homeless in our community. Also, it has always been discouraging to me to know that Santa Barbara County has one of the highest rates of homeless school-age youth and school-age children and youth in our state, you know, which was also discovered during our point in time count last year. We have to come together and do this as a collaborative effort. These are members of our community, as Chuck said. You know, I was part of the homeless supportive service in Lompoc 3 years ago when we put together a triage center to try and assist the homeless living in the riverbed there. And whether, you know, some people view it as a loss, and some people view it as a success. I think anytime that we can connect any individuals in our community to the resources that they need to succeed, it's a success. So even though we didn't solve the homeless issue in Lompoc 3 years ago, we connected people to resources, and I think that's the ongoing, you know, importance of coming together to support those in our community. I know that COVID, you know, and the pandemic over the past year has really affected our connections, you know, to those struggling in our communities, as social distancing and a lot of the providers have had their offices closed, you know, and employees not working in the communities. I predict that, you know, as things start to open up, you know, those supportive services will be empowered, you know, as we can come together and start to work together. So it's good to be here, and thank you for inviting me, Chuck. I always appreciate the opportunity to, you know, share my experience with working in the community, and especially with the homeless. I think you're muted, Chuck.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chuck, for that. I appreciate that. Last but certainly not least, we have Tom Patton from the South Coast Chamber. I know that Tom has been active in representing the Chamber and also his own business in working with a local collaborative, SB Act. I don't know if, Tom, if you'd plan to say anything about that group, or, I mean, you're free to talk about, you know, the impacts of homelessness on your business or whatever else you'd like to share with us, but we're thrilled to have you, and take it away.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for Kristen Miller, the President and CEO of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber, for inviting me to speak in this capacity. Certainly far from an expert, just a member of the community and business person that's interested in trying to get involved and help out. I'm the managing partner of the Ramada by Wyndham Santa Barbara. And as you said, Chuck, yes, certainly have been involved in trying to do our part in the Chamber. I am a board member of the Chamber. I'm the the hospitality committee liaison, and that has kind of been tasked with focusing on the area of homelessness and trying to figure out what role the chamber can play to help both facilitate the issues that the businesses are having and also provide a solution moving forward. And in addition to the chamber, I'm also on the board of Visit Santa Barbara, which is our tourism marketing organization, the incoming chair of the State Hotel Association. And I also want to shout out to Downtown Santa Barbara, though not part of their organization, they've also been very involved with the conversations that we've been having. And Chuck, as you said, these regional action plan meetings that we've been having recently have been very beneficial. Those have been coordinated by the fine people at Santa Barbara ACT, and CityNet has also been very involved. And boy, I tell you, Jeff and Barbara at Santa Barbara ACT have been very involved in those conversations and very appreciative for getting those going. These businesses the meetings are weekly. We've got local businesses on there as well as residents. And we're just all trying to figure out the best way to advocate for those measures that can really move the needle with this issue. You know, we all agree that people living on the street is not acceptable. I mean, we've been letting that go on for too long. But at the same time, it's also not acceptable for our businesses and our employees and our visitors to have to contend with the multitude of criminal as well as health and safety issues. The hospitality industry is one of the largest employers in Santa Barbara, and the people they employ and the taxes they pay are vital to the economic health of our county and cities. The taxes are a large portion of the general fund that help the city and county pay for the many services and facilities that they provide to our residents. It's not acceptable for our visitors to have their bikes literally cut off their vehicles, their cars broken into, to witness both drug use and drug dealing in city parks, on the sidewalks, and have their guests and employees accosted or verbally harassed by homeless individuals. And that's going on now as we speak. But even prior to the pandemic, visitors and residents did not want to venture downtown due to the aggressive panhandling and unsafe and unsanitary conditions. And Chuck, as you mentioned, due to the CDC COVID guidelines and the current legal environment, you know, the city and the county and law enforcement have really had their hands full trying to work with a very limited set of tools to deal with a lot of these issues. Many of the people that are perpetrating these acts, you know, have no fear of any consequences because frankly, there are none. I mean, they're back out on the street the same day or the next day doing the exact same thing. So the question we've been grappling with is, you know, how do we help our businesses while also ensuring that the unsheltered population gets the help that they need? On a state level, the California Hotel and Lodging Association was instrumental with Project Room Key. That was a project that the state put up a great deal of money to help house the vulnerable people experiencing homelessness during COVID-19. And we were able to get a lot of people off the street and in hotels and get the services they needed during a very critical time. That kind of morphed into Project Home Key, which was a partnership with the state again to purchase and rehabilitate hotels and motels and other acceptable buildings and convert them into permanent long-term housing, again, for the unsheltered population. And you know, all those things help, but we've got a long way to go. And also the hotels stepped up big time during the pandemic by providing temporary housing for people ordered to isolate or quarantine, first responders and medical personnel. And many of these rooms were provided at minimal or no cost to those people. All at the same time, we had to figure out how to keep our doors open and survive during the pandemic and make sure that our health and safety protocols were top notch and that we were ensuring the health and safety of both our employees and our guests. And both the state and National Hotel Association were instrumental in rolling out clean and safe guidelines, which kept our properties and our guests safe. A big topic of conversation recently at the RAP meetings has been bridge housing. What is it? What does it do? How is it different from shelter housing? And we've learned that it's a valuable stepping stone towards permanent housing. The problem is that no one wants it in their neighborhood, and it also competes with desperately needed housing for our local workforce. We are facing the tightest labor market in recent history due to many factors, but certainly enhanced unemployment benefits and the skyrocketing housing costs are key factors. As you mentioned, you know, there's only one guaranteed way to end homelessness, and that's to provide homes to everyone. But the price to do so is monumental, And even if the funds were available, there's just not enough housing units. So how do we ensure how do we ensure we've got enough housing for our workforce and for the unsheltered population? And you mentioned that, there's that perception out there that if we do a really good job, that we're going to be inundated by, people from outside of the area. And Jeff Schaefer with Santa Barbara Act said, that may be a possibility, but, we can't let that stop us from doing the right thing and moving forward. I've been in Santa Barbara 30 plus years, and I think we've been talking about the issue of homelessness as long as I've been here, and it's probably been going on long before that. And if there was an easy answer, it would have been solved by now. But I do know that no one organization is going to solve it on their own. I am more encouraged now than I have been in a long time by the collaboration that's taking place both on a city, county, and with Santa Barbara Act, CityNet, United Way, downtown Santa Barbara, and all the various chambers to try to come up with a solution. A key to this is going to be educating our residents about why we need to be involved, what the potential solutions are, and why we see those as the best path forward. If we can understand these processes, hopefully we can be vocal advocates to get these initiatives advanced forward. So going back to what I said earlier, we need to find a way to help these individuals that are on the streets, unsheltered, and or with mental health issues, while at the same time ensuring a clean and safe environment for our businesses and visitors. So again, thank you for allowing me to be part of this conversation.
Thank you very much. We have at least one comment in the chat. Eddie, did you want to be the one fielding questions to our panel?
Well, everybody can see the question that was just posed by Andrew Rawls. The question is right at the end. What can we do? I'm sorry, I lost it.
Here it is.
They're all coming in now. How can we as business owners work with the city to create policies that encourage landlords to start to fill those vacancies? We're all aware of the vacancies that have been there on State Street for years. I mean, it just seems mind-boggling to me that there are landlords who don't actually want to lease their properties. So that's a great question, is that if anybody can address it for Andrew.
So this is where what I'd like to encourage the panelists to be the responders. Does any of you have any comment on business vacancies and strategies that you're aware of to fill those vacancies?
Chuck, if it's okay, I see Robin there, and I know Robin Elander has been very involved with that. Might be willing to add a little bit to that conversation.
Great. And Robin herself has a comment. So go ahead, Robin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for hosting this important community conversation. Regarding vacancies, that is a big question right now. There's a lot going on to try to address that. And there's multiple factors involved. One is, the complication of, the pandemic and what it's caused, but it's also, there were challenges, particularly downtown, but throughout our community before the pandemic. What is being done? There's a number of new initiatives being explored, and some consultants that are doing really positive work in this area that are partnering to bring in businesses downtown. And that is a newish collaborative effort, somewhat that's been involved with the South Coast Chamber, but also in partnership with multiple entities, including ours downtown. So that's one thing that is being done. Regarding the question of, these folks that are not actively trying to fill their businesses, and if they're removed landlords or something like that, it's a bigger issue and a concern, of course. And so there has been some talks at the city level, as well as with our organization, as to what could be done. I think it is yet to be seen exactly what can be done. Some have talked about potentially a fee or a tax as to a certain amount of time if they're not actively seeking or interviewing people, because in some cases there's actually people interested, but they're not being as responsive as we would like to see. And I see one gentleman shaking his head who has finally been able to open a business, but has managed to go through a number of the challenging hoops that sometimes it is not as easy, you'd think, to call up an agent and find a place, but the agent is actually having a bit of a disconnect with the landlord or not, or the owner. So there's some challenges there, and so they're not unsolvable, but they do prevent people from moving into businesses at the rate in which we would all like to see. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions about that. And then curious, Chuck, if you have a response regarding the next question I mentioned in the chat.
So, yeah, this is, I mean, it's hard because there's a lot of experts in the room. It's hard to get, and our panelists may not actually be experts on these things, but I want to give them a chance. Did the three of you have a comment based on what Robin's talking about? And it's okay if you don't.
Chuck, I was just going to add, I mean, Robin
Yeah.
has been very involved with the conversations that the chamber has been having and, trying to come up with a solution. As she said, we've got a couple of consultants that, and actually an ex-retailer, Amy from Plum Goods, that, is very involved in heading that up and trying to create that missing link that we have with filling those vacancies and trying to put together a plan that the community gets behind and linking potential businesses with the landlords and actively going out and being that liaison. So it's not so insurmountable for someone trying to come in and open their business on State Street, because it's tough. And congratulations to Andrew there, getting your business open.
So Robin's question was about federal funding coming down. And truthfully, I'm going to table that question, Robin, because it's not just federal funding. There's potentially millions and millions of dollars also from the state. So one of the things that we had talked about, the United Way is very interested in continuing these business conversations. And we're thinking that we probably will devote another forum like this to the possible resources that will be coming from the government for housing and for homelessness specifically. So stay tuned. I know Kimberly Albers is on the line. She may, Kimberly, if you wanted to, in maybe just a couple of minutes, do you have anything that you want to say about the expectation of future dollars? And if not, that's okay too.
Hi, Chuck. I'm not able to speak to that right now, but I'm really enjoying the conversation. I appreciate you guys hosting today.
That's great. Thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm not seeing other questions in the chat. Do people have questions for our panelists about what's going on regionally? I think Tom did a really nice job presenting a variety and a multi-pronged series of approaches that are happening in Santa Barbara. You have a very unified business community, thanks to Robin's organization, Downtown Santa Barbara, and other business representing organizations that help, I think, to elevate the voices of business. I know those organizations may not quite be as prevalent in Santa Maria and Lompoc, but I'm curious to know, both Chuck and Shirag mentioned that there's definitely a sympathetic group of people who want to see things happen. And then we did see something happen in the riverbed that was largely not business led. Do either of you have any comment about what you see as possible business next steps for businesses in your regions? And if you do, unmute yourself.
On behalf of my experience in Lompoc, that's a difficult question or topic or question to answer. I've worked with the homeless in all three of our communities over the past 10 years, and what I found is that each city is unique. Each city is a little bit different on the location of our homeless and where they or how they affect our community. For Lompoc, we haven't seen, except for some of the theft that happens countywide. Most of our homeless are outside or in our riverbed. So the activity happens usually at night. And those with Ring cameras, we see all the activity as that's shared throughout our community. But in respect to how can the business community support or affect the homeless or that. I think what, my friend Jeff Schaefer is on here, has done some amazing work in Santa Barbara with, educating the business community on homeless and the issues related to homeless and how to respond or communicate, when homeless come into, lobbies or businesses or out front. I think that type of engagement or that type of empowerment for our business community would be appreciated countywide. That type of education to our community on, or our business community on what our homeless are going through, what's the situation, why they are where they are. I think that type of education would be helpful for our business community. I hope that helps.
I think it does. Shirag, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a little bit. I have been reading about how Los Angeles has done somewhat to effect of smaller houses and everything like that. I'm not really too familiar, but I have been reading about that. That's something that could benefit the homeless community. Like Chuck mentioned, a lot of the stuff that does happen is near the riverbed, at night, and something like that where we can kind of get them housed into maybe the city or something like that, where they buy a piece of land and have a kind of community for them and services like you were saying, Chuck. And maybe just smaller housing, and then maybe a communal, say, for cost factors, just a communal kitchen, communal, restrooms and kind of things like that. Just thinking on top of my head, something like that may help, to alleviate some of this. Like you were saying, with the statistics, once they're housed, they're on the path to be a lot better. That's the first key step of, trying to end this homelessness.
Fantastic, and thank you. So some of the questions that are coming up in the chat and as are being alluded to by our panelists relate to business nonprofit partnerships and some business innovative strategies, and we're going to get to those in the next segment. But before we do, since Tom and both Rob and Tom were singing kind of the praises of SB Act, for those of you not familiar, I'm going to ask Jeff Schaefer or Barbara, put you on the spot a little bit. Can you give a 2 or 3 minute just summary of what you've been doing with the business community in Santa Barbara and what you see as kind of the benefits of that?
Yeah, thanks, Chuck, and thanks everyone for being on this call. I think from our perspective, our mantra is kind of like nobody wants to be affected by homelessness. So equally, if you're a resident, business owner, hotel owner, or that family or individual experiencing homelessness, across the board, no one wants to have those impacts. So when we started our collective impact model, working with the city and the Santa Barbara Foundation, one of the first things we started with this idea of neighborhood regional action plan meetings for State Street, East Side, and Waterfront, knowing that each neighborhood faces unique situations based on what's in their neighborhood and how many people are experiencing homelessness in their neighborhood. And so I think that's been very important, because for our vision, we do want to see the county and the city and the faith communities and the businesses and the residents all aligned and going in the same direction. And we can only do that by working together. So the reps are equally focused on, such as our waterfront call this week was pretty much based on why are all these bicycle thefts happening and what can we do about it? What can we do about it as a community? What can SBPD do about it? As well as looking at what actually is bridge housing, so that if there's a bridge housing opportunity in the neighborhood, how can we get the community potentially behind it, knowing that it's a successful model to help people out of homelessness. So it takes a lot of work to continue to work together, because sometimes we're always tempted to kind of splinter off, but it's been really good. I've really appreciated everyone's perspective. And we've come up with some innovative solutions. So thanks, Chad.
Thank you. So I feel like I'm chomping at the bit to hear some examples of good work being done. I'm going to introduce our two panelists who are going to talk about solutions. I'm going to share my screen so you can see their bios. I am actually going to have ladies go first and have Elizabeth speak before Glenn, but Glenn Batchelor, if you don't know him, has been quietly, from my perspective, helping to change the game for homelessness in Santa Barbara. And I'm going to let him talk specifically about some of the successes that he's had as a business leader and using his business partnerships and also his own acumen to create some brand new ideas that have been some of the most successful models of addressing homelessness in Santa Barbara. And this is evidenced by the fact that safe parking, which is one of the things that he worked on specifically, has now been picked up by our congressman in trying to develop a national safe parking model for people living in their vehicles. And if you haven't seen the film Nomadland, a lot of the issues for people living in their cars are addressed in that film. It's a beautiful example of what I think is going to be a growing population in our country. And I'll let Glenn share more when he speaks. But first, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Funk. I saw Elizabeth speak several weeks ago, and I said, I've got to meet this woman. She's created a partnership with several impact funds and developed her own nonprofit. I'm going to let her speak specifically. You can see her bio here. Elizabeth, take 15 minutes and tell us about what you want to see start to happen in Santa Barbara. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Chuck. And I am going to share my screen.
Can you? That's the question. Let me make sure you can. Oop.
Do you want to continue? Yes.
Yeah, I'm making you a co-host. There you go.
Okay. Well, let's see here. Type in. Select a window. Okay. But okay, so hi, I am Elizabeth Funk, and I am the founder of Dignity Moves. Dignity Moves was started by a group of concerned business leaders, just like yourselves, who came together and said, with showing you, I'm very proud to say that the first of our projects opened today, the grand opening of our project. So I want to take a minute and show this video.
Were formerly homeless. People like
Are you
and
able to
I,
see it?
mothers,
Not yet.
even children.
Okay.
The only difference is they
All
didn't
right.
have a place
Sorry.
to call home. Well, this is going to be their home. So let me take.
Elizabeth, do you want us to start with Glenn and you'll get this set up?
Well, no, I just
Okay.
don't know why it won't. Here we go. Share this. It's making me share a specific page. Okay, here we go.
Great.
You see that now?
Got it.
Joe Price, I'm VP of Real Estate.
Can you see that
and
now?
Operations for 6 months ago, this site was a former car storage facility for abandoned vehicles. Today, we are opening our doors for over 124 people who were formerly homeless. People like you and I, mothers, fathers, even children. The only difference is they didn't have a place to call home. Well, this is going to be their home. So let me take you on a tour. On site, we have 12 family units to support up to 36 people. Friendly have a bit more space when you have families, plenty of space to store the toys and the books that are needed. So important to have that own bathrooms inside the units. We want to facilitate and make it easier for the kids to live on a site like this or live in a community like this. You've been homeless for just one day, that's a traumatic experience. And if you have children, it's 10 times more traumatic. Giving the kids something fun and colorful like this really makes our hearts sing. This is the most important part of the entire site, to give somebody their own private front door. This is much more than a lock. This lock provides security, safety, privacy, and above all else, dignity for every person who moves into this community. I wake up, I'm dry, I have my phone, my possessions are still with me. So what do I need to do next? I need to go and get a shower and get ready for my day. If you want privacy and dignity, you don't want communal bathrooms. Again, you want that private door. And as you can see, they're ADA accessible, because we want to make sure that this community is open to all and that we've created an inclusive environment. This is a game changer when it comes to solving California's housing crisis. What we've achieved is utterly astounding and remarkable. Within 6 months, we've gone from a former car storage facility to 100 housing units.
Now I'm going to give my quick presentation. So Dignity Moves, as I said, was started by a group of concerned business leaders.
My name is Millicent Finn.
Whoops.
I am the Children's Services Coordinator here at the Villa. They call me Millie for short. I've been with Life Move for about 2.5 years now. I have a Children's Services.
Okay, try that again. Too many windows. This is the problem that we all know, and this is what brought us together to try to solve this, to try to address it. You know, in California, we have a massive unsheltered homeless problem. In Santa Barbara County, as was referenced earlier, it's close to 2,000. And really, it's, when we started looking into the problem, we realized that part of the problem is that in California, particularly, policy has been that we focus almost absolutely every single dollar into building permanent housing. And, it's not quick and it's not inexpensive. It's, in San Francisco, it's over $700,000 per door, and it can take 4 or 5 years to build. And so the result of that is that some lucky few get permanent housing and 72% remain unsheltered. And this is the problem we set out to solve. And we started thinking about what you all call in Santa Barbara, I know, bridge housing. We call it interim supportive housing, but it's the same idea, which is a stop, a place to be in between tents and affordable housing, kind of a waiting room where people can come in and get stabilized and get connected to the services that they need. So these are the rooms that we had. One of our team members owns a company that designs building materials, and so manufactures building materials. And so we had him design a unit for us that is about $10,000 per door. As Joanne said, everybody gets a door that locks, which is fundamental. And as we started looking into this, we found this study that was recently done in Goleta that shows that, why are people not wanting to come to a shelter? 60% of them are saying it's because they want to have their own space. They don't want to be away from their possessions. They don't like dorm style arrangements, and they don't allow pets. All those things can be different if you have your own room. So we think it's really fundamental. So how do we go about doing this? We need land. We need a place to put these, and Santa Barbara has lots of underutilized land. The county owns land. There are private developers with projects that are tied up in entitlements, corporations who are maybe land banking for a headquarters project in the down the road, underutilized parking lots. Why wouldn't we use some of that excess land to house those experiencing homelessness? And the beauty is that the land doesn't have to be available for very long because these units are portable. We can literally pick them up with a forklift and put them on a truck and move them to the next destination. And we can create a community from a parking lot to a community in 10 weeks with, laundry facilities, restroom trailers, dining rooms, the whole thing. We've been working with Gensler, who is working for us pro bono, one of the largest architectural firms in the world, to design these as really thoughtful communities. And even with the support services and the restrooms and so forth, the whole site comes out at about $30,000 per door. So what has changed for us is we've started thinking about we came at this thinking that this was an interim solution, that this was just, a temporary stop for people for 3 to 6 months. And of course, that's all funded by government funding and philanthropy that we've been lucky enough to be able to pull together in truly a public-private partnership. But it does sort of beg the question of why these couldn't be places that people live forever. For some folks, going straight from the streets to a studio apartment isn't successful. And, so one of the things we've been getting involved in is trying to influence policy at the state and even the HUD level to think about why this couldn't be literally a new rung on the housing ladder and be considered housing. When you take out the most expensive pieces of housing, which are the bathrooms and the kitchens, you can start to do housing for $30,000 a door instead of $700,000 a door. It's really important to note, as many people have referenced earlier, that housing alone does not solve homelessness. Really, one of the benefits of having a site that people want to come to is that it will attract them to come in and get them to engage with those services, connect with the mental health support and all the other things that have been referenced before. But one of the other important findings that we learned on this journey was that it's not a one-for-one of the number of people who go into interim housing who then also need a permanent housing solution. That we find that with some of our partners, that once clients come in and they get stabilized and we can work with them, nearly a third of them exit homelessness by being reunited with family. Another third of them can be convinced to relocate and helped to relocate to a less expensive city and help them find a job there. So really only about 1/3 of the people who are in the interim supportive housing need to go on to permanent supportive housing or permanent affordable housing. So we're making the case that investing in this interim step is actually really fiscally responsible for cities and counties. So we are in conversations with and working with the County of Santa Barbara to hopefully do several of these sites in Santa Barbara. We are working on our first site with the county on county-owned land that is not yet confirmed, so I can't announce it. But the county seems to really be eager to embrace this concept and is being very supportive. And we, as Dignity Moves, as a group, are partnering with them to support what they can afford, support it with philanthropic dollars. So, if they've got enough money to build one site, we want to stretch that and build 4 sites by raising philanthropic dollars. And so we're looking to the community to help us do that. And we also need the community to help us find additional land where we can do more of these projects. So I'm going to stop there. And I'm really proud to say that this is all a team of volunteers that have come together and brought, whatever we can bring, whether we're building materials manufacturer or, all the different pieces. Several of our members are local in Santa Barbara, which is one of the reasons why Santa Barbara is one of our first projects. We're also doing projects in San Francisco. We are deep in conversations with a couple of city council districts in Los Angeles. We're really hoping to try to replicate this around the state. So with that, I open it up to discussion or turn it back over to Chuck.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm trying to keep this brief and focused. I would imagine there's lots of people, including myself, who would love to talk to you a lot more about this. So is there a way people can get in touch with you or do you have a representative that we can reach out to?
Absolutely. I would gladly put my email in the chat.
Great.
And I would welcome anyone to reach out. And then, the thing that we can ask from all of you is, it's always difficult when we bring new sites and new projects into the community. We just would love your help in making sure that it's embraced and that it's supported and hopefully we'll be able to do several of these together.
I actually do have I think a very relevant question, which is everyone believes, and I think it's true, that for many folks, just putting them in a house without supportive services, and you alluded to it as well, might be a problem. Do you guys have a plan for linking up with a service provider?
Absolutely. In fact, the site that you saw the little video of in Mountain View, we partnered with Life Moves, which is the leading services provider in Silicon Valley. In every case, we will have a services agency working on the site and helping work with those folks to address the underlying roots of homelessness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being in Santa Barbara, and we look forward to your success.
Thank you.
Yes. And now I'd like to introduce Glenn Batchelor, who I consider a friend and mentor. Glenn, please share with us some of your wisdom and some of your ideas about next steps.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here today. And I'm especially happy because I'm calling from the Boston area where I'm visiting family that I haven't seen in over a year. So it feels really good, I can tell you. But happy to be here. And I want to just share some of the experiences that I've had and really from a business perspective over the last 10 plus years working on homelessness. And really the point of doing that is sort of twofold. One is to show that it can work, and absolutely the business perspective is needed. And secondly, that, hopefully from these small examples that I give, hopefully you get the idea that there are lots of other and even bigger ideas out there. And if we come together in a bigger, broader, more unified fashion, there's no telling what we can accomplish. And I think what Elizabeth just talked about is one example, and I'm sure there are many others as well. I came to Santa Barbara about 12 years ago, and I knew one thing. I wanted to help in the community, but I didn't really know in what area or any focus area or whatever. And I sort of gravitated towards homelessness really because of the magnitude of the problem. I'm one of those people that I like difficult problems, and I love the challenge of a difficult problem. And so certainly homelessness is that. And I was also at the beginning a member of the Unitarian Society, and they had just taken on the responsibility for freedom warming centers. And this is a time when that organization was really in its infancy, and nobody else would take it. So it was sort of a drift, if you will. And the Unitarian Society had no infrastructure, no funding, I mean, no wherewithal to do it other than the passion and the heart to do it. And so myself and a few other people went on a couple-of-year program to really build awareness about that organization and short-term fundraising so that that organization could get some runway towards some stability, and which it ultimately did get. And about 10 years later, they're servicing thousands of people every year in terms of shelter during the rain and the cold and providing them meals. And we would be a heck of a lot worse off if they weren't around. So that was really where I started. And then I joined an organization called Social Venture Partners, which is a collection of people that a lot of them with business backgrounds, some doctors, some lawyers. And really what we try to do is work with nonprofit organizations to build their capacity, to sort of help them do more of what they do well. And that's really what we're all about. And we've essentially done that over the last 8 or 10 years with virtually every organization in the county of Santa Barbara that works with homelessness. There's almost nobody that we haven't worked with at one time or another. And the one example I'm going to use in terms of this is New Beginnings, which is maybe an organization that you're familiar with, that about 8 years ago, they were in pretty significant financial trouble. And they put out a letter to the community that if they didn't raise a certain amount of money by a certain time, that basically they were going to no longer exist. And so we sort of brought in a small team and really put together a plan and worked with their board, worked with their staff, worked with outside funders, et cetera. And within a pretty short period of time, a year to 2 years, they were considerably more stable. And Chuck referenced the safe parking program, which is one of the several programs that they have. But the safe parking program wouldn't be around today if we hadn't really fixed the capacity issue with the overall organization about 7 or 8 years ago. And their counseling of thousands of people every year, would not be around today. And they're also a significant houser of homeless people. So that was just one example of the types of things we worked on. And then shortly after that, a number of us really got challenged by the idea of housing. Because my experience was I go into all sorts of homeless meetings and we talk about everything else, but it's like, oh yeah, we can't do housing because it's just too hard. The vacancy rates are too low, and the rents are too high. And most of the people that were getting housed at that time, a lot of them anyways, were going into public or quasi-public housing, and loved a challenge like that. And so we figured that, Santa Barbara can't be the only place in the country that has similar problems. And so somebody else has dealt with this and looked at this. So we really did a considerable amount of research. And we found a program up in Seattle that was called the Landlord Liaison Program. And what was unique about that was It was a program for business people developed by those business people. Seattle was smart enough to go to the landlords there and say, what would it take to house a whole lot of homeless people? What would it take for you to do that, for you to say yes? And so they said it would take this, you know, they had a laundry list of them. And that became the program. And over a 7-year period, up in Seattle, again, the scale's much bigger, there's a much bigger population base, et cetera. So don't equate the numbers to Santa Barbara. But, you know, they housed 8,000 homeless people with private landlords in 7 years, which was pretty amazing. And so we said, you know, we might want to bring that down here. And so we did about 5+ years ago with a few, you know, few minor changes, but for the most part. And essentially what the program is, and by the way, the program is not called the Landlord Liaison Program anymore. It's called Partners in Housing Solutions. But basically what the program is it provides landlords with a package that really dramatically reduces their risk. I mean, there's risk reduction funds, for example, if they have losses. There, you know, there's you know, special vetting that is done for the people that are brought in there. There's case management for every single one. There's a 24/7 hotline, so they absolutely always know who to talk to, and someone will answer the phone. You know, and several other things. And there are bonuses for landlords that house certain amounts of people, things like that. And so it's been going for about 5+ years, and we're right around 800 homeless people housed with private landlords in the last 5 years. This year alone, we're on track to do about 250 to 300, you know, homeless people housed, all of them again with private landlords. And we're constantly looking at business model 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And so the model continues to change and evolve and get stronger and more effective. And, you know, I think it's definitely been a contributor to housing people. And I guess the last thing I would say there, that we've had a lot of emphasis on veterans and on families. And of those 800 people, about half of them are children. So homeless children are part of that. So obviously we housed a lot of families, and that, including families that were of 9 and families of 10, if you can believe that. So if we can house people, families of 10, we can certainly house most anybody. And so very proud of that program, and it's, you know, lots of organizations in the county work with that. The last example I use is something in the last year or two when there has been a lot of discussion about prevention and homeless prevention, because it's a very tricky subject. Because on one hand, you've really got to do something about the numbers that are coming into the pipeline. You know, you can't just focus on getting people outside the other end of the pipeline. You got to do something at the beginning of the pipeline too. But the problem with prevention is it's very hard to predict who is actually going to become homeless and who is not. And myself and some others gravitated to a similar strategy called diversion, which is basically 100% of the people that I work with are homeless. They're newly homeless. But the idea is to get them out of homelessness as fast as you possibly can, hopefully 30 days or less, so they don't get into the homeless system, where in many cases they stay there for months and years. And so, and there's all sorts of examples all over the country that we took models from and approaches. And there's the Cleveland Mediation Center in Ohio is an expert in this, an expert trainer in it. And we've had them come and do training throughout the county to make it part of the culture here in Santa Barbara County. And I know there's some working going on right now to allocate some significant funding so that we can do more and more in terms of diversion. Because I hate to say this, but it'd be pretty darn hard to house every single homeless person when we've got about 2,200 new homeless people coming into the system every year. But if you can divert them out, then those numbers are substantially less than that, and you've got a better shot. And so that's really the whole idea of diversion. But these are examples of looking at it from a different perspective, from a business perspective, and trying to bring business solutions to it. And I guess I would just share a couple of observations, and then I'll stop. You know, one is that, you know, what makes businesses and business people successful absolutely it works with working with homelessness. I mean, those skills and those perspectives absolutely apply. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. And so I really encourage those that aren't involved or aren't as involved they could be to get involved. The second thing I would observe is that the people, the nonprofits and the organizations that are working day to day on homelessness are really quite thinly, they're stretched very thin. And they're working with very difficult, complex day-to-day issues. So it's really hard for them to step back and look at some of these innovations and some of these strategies and really see some of the gaps, if you will. And so, actually some of the work we've done with Social Venture Partners has become more of an incubator of ideas. And one of our partners is actually working with Elizabeth in terms of the idea that she just talked about, for example, but we're looking for gaps. The people working day just aren't, they're just too much into the day-to-day to a lot of times to be able to do that. So I think that's a really important thing that businesses and business people can bring to this. And then the last thing I would just say, is a little bit of a cheerleader, if you will, is that, we know it works. We know business can really help. We just need more of you. We need more businesses. We need more business people that will spend their time. And, if we could have a broader, more unified, collective business community response, I don't have any doubt that we would A, come up with better solutions, and B, would be a heck of a lot of leverage towards the decision makers, when certain initiatives come up. So I really, really encourage those to get involved or even get more involved. And I really applaud those for putting together this meeting today. And I'll stop it right there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I find you inspiring in the work that you're doing, and I hope others here do as well. As I mentioned earlier, to some extent, this meeting is just the beginning of what we hope will be more collective action on the part of the business community. And I know Eddie, I'm going to bring Eddie back. Eddie's interested in helping to lead that business engagement. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of you, all of you. I want to thank all of our speakers, particularly Glenn and Elizabeth, for your work. I'm going to let Eddie close us out here today. Thank you all for coming and for your attention. Eddie. Oh, yeah. So you should have, oh, here we go. Eddie's got it.
Hey, Glenn Batchelor, it was sure good to hear your passion. All of you who have spoken today, Elizabeth, the model that you presented, all I could sit back here is, I told Chuck, you got to mute it. You got to mute it, because I'm just going, thank God. Thank God. There's so much passion. Jeff Schaefer and your group and all the work that you have done over the years, people that aren't here today who have been working on this issue for so long, pouring their heart and soul into this. I get to run a United Way. We pour money into it. And, we've got people who are so passionate. There are 2 or 3 of them on this call today that, they dedicate their lives to it, but they need your help. Glenn, you said it so perfectly. We need the business community to have a much bigger, much broader voice. The money isn't going to be the issue. I've said this before and people chastise me about it. It's not the money, man. The money is money. It's about the coordination of the effort that we need to bring the business community around to work with government, to work with philanthropy. Somebody who I have the utmost respect for, besides people in this room, who's in the United Way network, said to me when we started Home for Good, she said, it's in a town that I'm not supposed to mention on these calls. Enough said. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. They said, we know we can't end homelessness here. We know that. But we had to put a stake in the ground. So we're going to say we're going to end homelessness here. But she said, that's not true in Santa Barbara County. You can end homelessness in Santa Barbara County. Our problem isn't that big. Our problem is what Glenn alluded to. We've got to do a much better job about engaging our business community. The next meeting will be scheduled in June. It will go much deeper into legislation, funding. Chuck alluded to it. There is a ton of money between all of the different ABs and House bills and the federal funding that's coming our way. So I would say bone up on what's coming out of Sacramento, because it is pretty amazing the way things are shifting, the way they think about what needs to be funded there. So I thank everybody again. Please, before you leave, answer the poll. We'll follow this meeting up with another poll. If you have questions you would like included in that poll, please send them to me. Everybody has my email now. And so let's have some closing thoughts from anybody on the, well, anybody in the room who'd like to unmute yourselves and share some thoughts. Chuck, back to you.
That wasn't actually intended, but we do have about maybe 5 minutes. Is there anybody who does want to share something? If not, it's okay. I want to thank everyone again for coming. Stay tuned. Eddie talked about a poll. That's a live poll that we're taking right now. You can see it on your screen where it says polls down below. I also included a survey. It's a survey of business interests that if now that we have your emails here, I'm going to send it out to you all again. If you can take some time and do that survey, we'd really appreciate it. But thank you all for coming. Looking forward to working with you in the future, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.